Welcome to Alligator Preserves, everyone. I am your host, Laurel McHargue. And as always, I have a really special guest with us today. Her name is Demetria McNeal, and she has written a book called You Don't Say. And I'm saying You Don't Say because we're going to talk about how clever this title is in just a minute. Demetria, welcome to Alligator Preserves.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you are so welcome. We met back in December at
We
Jerry
did.
Fabianic's Book Nook during the Georgetown Christmas market, right?
We did.
And everyone was flocking to your table to
They
get a
were.
copy of your book.
They actually were. That's true. That's true.
And so at one point, we were on opposite ends of the room, and I
Right.
was like, "What's going on over there? Who's getting all that attention?" And I came over and I saw your book, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, okay, I can understand why." And of course, we got a copy of your book, and here you are today on my
That's right.
show.
That's right. That's right. Such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. Did you wake up to snow this morning? You're in Denver, right? Or in the Denver area?
I am in the Denver area. I did not wake up to snow. What's very interesting, it's been 70s all week, and some system is blowing in today. And it's the weather's supposed to turn just for today, and then across the weekend it's supposed to warm back up. So
Yeah, crazy. I think we're going to have an early spring. I think winter just kind of said, not this year. Anyway,
I hope so.
Demetria
Yes, ma'am.
M. McNeal, Ph.D. Your bio is incredibly impressive. I'm not going to read it, but I'm going to post it below and I'm going to have it on my website. But I want my listeners to know a little bit about who you are. Who is Demetria McNeal? Tell us who you are, who you really, really are.
Yeah, so this would be kind of the insider debrief on who I am. Um, some people may not realize, but I am a Southern gal. I was born and raised in Houston, Texas. That's where I'm originally from. I am the daughter of a member of the union. My mother was actually a union steward for the phone company of old. It's not what it used to be. It's kind of branched out, but I was raised in that environment. My father actually succumbed to the disease of addiction at a very young age for me, and I'm also a wife. I am a stepmother. I am a best friend. I am someone that does not accept no. I am someone that charts my course and achieve the goal in spite of what's in front of me. I am someone who loves to volunteer at food banks with children's organizations and political organizations. I am a scrapbooker. I am a spin instructor. I am a cardiovascular disease researcher. I am many things, and I really enjoy that about myself in that I'm able to not only explore, but identify the different parts of me, things that are strengths for me, but then also things that are not such strong for me to do. Um, and I also am someone who has the ability to take a very difficult and complex concept and make it digestible and relatable and sometimes funny for most folks to be able to understand. But more importantly, I am an authentic individual. If we're close friends or if you just met me, if you ask me a question, understand that you will get the answer.
I,
Thank you for that
I,
question and
oh
giving me the
well,
space.
I love that. And isn't humor so important in our world today?
It is. It is.
Um, So we're going to talk about your book, and I know that you use this book in corporate settings to help corporations, people in corporations, people in the medical field, doctor-patient relationships, corporate communication, how to communicate more effectively. And again, the subtitle is How We Get Communication Wrong and How to Get It Right. We're going to talk about how this book can help people like me, people like my friends, people like your friends, because
Yes.
it is so filled with amazing tips and advice. And I'll leave it at that. But let's do a little more about you personally. Do you have an earliest memory of when you became aware of maybe communication going wrong?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I think what's interesting about the idea, if you will, of communication is that everybody thinks that it's happening and they also think that they are doing it simply because their mouth is moving and words are coming out, right? And that's not how communication works oftentimes. I think that when folks are talking, um, there's a inherent belief and assumption that their intent, what they believe is being conveyed, is what's actually happening to the receiver or to the intended audience. And that's usually not the case because everyone has their own lived experience, their own perspective, their own lens, their own filter by which they're hearing things, seeing things, expressing things. And unless you understand that, then communication really hasn't happened. So when you ask me about my earliest memory about kind of communication going wrong, I think it's about being misunderstood. Um, Folks thinking one thing sort of about me or being able to put labels and attach judgments to me um, based on being misinformed or uninformed about what they're talking about. And so I have always been very clear with people about giving them the truth and being able to communicate in a way that lends to understanding. Because I think that's kind of the caveat that most folks miss is that understanding has to happen, right? The way that I process what was communicated to me arrived and was processed by me by the way the intended person that sent the message meant it to be. And although that may sound simple, because we are human beings, that can be very difficult at times with what may seem like very simple subjects, very simple conversations, and they may not end up being so simple.
Yeah, you mentioned in one of your previous interviews that you were inspired to write this book based on decades of friendships
Oh, that's right. Yes,
and
ma'am.
what you've experienced and seen and witnessed in maybe communication not going quite right.
That's right. So, what is one of the strengths that I have are deep ingrained friendships. The average span of my close friends is over 25 years. Um, and that's significant because they have seen me in many different aspects and facets of my life. I have also seen them in a variety of situations. But more importantly, our relationships have gone through ebbs and flows and they've gone through seasons.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, when you have a true friend, um, the friendship lasts. Rather, there's a season where you're disconnected and you don't communicate at all, or times when something's happening and you need to talk almost like every day, which can last for weeks or months, and then it passes, and then you may not talk for, a few times a year. But those friendships taught me um, how to ensure that one, I understand the dynamics of the relationship that I'm in. And that's important because it's always changing. And so you can't assume the relationship rules from 5 years ago are still the relationship rules for today because
Ooh,
life happens and you have to account for life.
yeah, yeah. And political environments and choices and learning new things about people that you might not have known before and
That's
having to
right.
deal
Oh,
with
that's
that.
right. That's right.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, that's so your title. I give you props on this title. It's very clever. So we can read this either as you don't say,
That's right.
you don't say,
That's right.
or you don't say. You,
That's right.
you could read this so many different ways, and I love
That's
it. And
right.
so that when I read you don't say, that reminds me of a section in here that you have about taboos,
Yes.
and you say usually we say the wrong thing or we say nothing.
Yes, ma'am.
Now I understand how saying the wrong thing can be detrimental, but why is saying nothing bad?
So that's kind of, so there's kind of two sides to that. In terms of how can saying nothing be bad, because there are seasons where people just need to feel supported or they need to know somebody thought about me today. Somebody thought about what happened to me today. Somebody thought about what I was experiencing today. And sometimes when we say nothing, it can make someone feel as if they may not be important. What's going on with them doesn't matter. No one cares. What I will also add is that sometimes silent presence can have profound meaning to someone as well. And by silent presence, I mean that you physically show up and you're just there. You don't have anything to say because you don't know what to say, or the situation or circumstances may be so dire that there just aren't words. But your silent presence can emit profound support, especially if you are supporting the person in their space in silence. So if someone isn't able to communicate what's happening with them, just the fact that you're there and you may be able to cook a meal for them, make sure that the mail has gotten picked up, the dog has gotten walked, those kinds of, and you don't have to announce it. You're just there and you're doing it. And you can let them know, I'm here when you need me. And you just keep moving about, supporting them, and they'll come around. But I think in both instances, that's what I mean with that.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my goodness, taboos are such a topic, right? And you talk about how they come about because we're stigmatized by culture,
That's
by
right.
our own beliefs and thoughts about things, by our family dynamics. Talk a little bit about that. And again, you talk about different roles in the family. I'm the fourth of five girls in my family,
Oh
so
wow.
I'm the perfect one.
That's right. That's
But talk about family roles and what happens if you're an only child. You have to take on all those roles.
it. Yeah. So it's really interesting about the dynamics and how your family of origin can kind of create the structure and the foundation for the way in which you show up and communicate in the world, right? So when you talk about the different roles in a family structure, if you're the person that's the hero, you always have to save the day. If you're the person that makes peace and you just want everyone to get along and you, right? If you're the scapegoat, the person that always gets blamed for things, oftentimes the way you communicate shows that you are always the one, for example, trying to quell an argument or make sure everyone feels okay. And you carry that outside of your family of origin. So you may carry that role at work, you may carry that role in your own family, you may carry that role amongst your friends. And here's the thing, that's not a role you chose. That's
Yeah.
a role that was assigned to you in your family of origin, and you've been carrying it. So here's the thing, is that the role you want? Is that the responsibility that you want? And if it is, okay. But the truth is, you have a choice and you have to be able to show up for you as well. So, for example, if you are always trying to make peace with everybody, usually those people do not have inner peace
Mm.
because you're always trying to make sure everybody else has peace. And it's very difficult to do that because you are not the keeper of somebody else's peace. They are. Right? So that's not your job. And so these roles that we have in family become these jobs and extensions of who we are, and we just accept them because they've just kind of became the label and the role that we've played, and we haven't taken a moment to identify is why am I doing this in the first place? And how does this impact how I communicate and interact with people, right?
What if you're in a role and you don't like it? How do you communicate to, say, your family that you don't want to be that scapegoat anymore? You don't want to be that peace person anymore.
Yeah, I talk about it. So what's very interesting about relationships and the dynamics of them is when something changes, or to the point we're making here, if a role that you have, you want to change it. There are many different things that can happen because here's the foundation of it. Your role is what has allowed the organism to work, right? So if you change, you have now changed the whole dynamic because that's your role. And so that's your role. And then I have a role, and then she has a role, and he has a role, and your uncle has a role. And when you want to do something different, you can be perceived as the outlier, right?
Mm.
You can be perceived as someone who may think they're better than everyone else. All of those things can get attached to you. But the truth is, in some instances, you may not even have to announce it. You may just simply change your behavior. So when someone constantly calls you, for example, to be the person to show up and fix everyone's problem, you can simply opt to not show up. Rather, ask them, how are you going to solve that? What do you think you're going to do? Right? Being able to separate yourself from a role you no longer want to have. And that is quite nicely giving the person back the role.
Huh. Ripple effects. There are always ripple effects in our
There's
decisions.
all that is right. That is right.
Yeah, and we maybe have to anticipate what the ripple effects might be and if we're willing to accept them.
That is absolutely right. And I do, that point, mention that in the book is that when there is a change, you have to be comfortable with what may be the fallout from that. So when you move in a different direction, or you communicate something that's very difficult, or you're changing roles, it's very possible that the person or the people may not be receptive to it. They may be
Yeah.
angered by it. They may not want to talk to you anymore. There's a host of outcomes. But here's the beauty of it. You can't control the outcome. You can't control another person. But here's the thing, if you've moved to a space where you're able to initiate that conversation or initiate that change in behavior, that is growth for you, right?
And that takes courage. You mentioned having courage to do things like
Absolutely
that.
right. Absolutely right. And so there's no fault in that.
Yeah.
There's no fault in growth.
No, I agree with you. You know, there's a section here I found, I mean, all your sections I found profoundly helpful. You know,
Thank you so much.
you talk about judgments and how our inferences and judgments can
Yes, ma'am.
oftentimes be wrong. And you
So
give
right.
examples of that. You know, we're judgy people, right?
Yes, ma'am.
We judge books by their covers,
That's
and we
right.
judge people by whatever we judge them by.
That's
And
right.
we don't know them. I mean, I went to West Point. I'm one of the early women who went to West Point, and believe me, I was judged on a lot of things. And again, what am I trying to say here? Give us some examples of how judgment can derail communication.
Well,
And again, I might be driving, and I think of this often.
uh-huh.
And again, your books are very helpful about it. I might be driving, some person might fly by me and screech in and go way over the speed limit, and I might have words that I might want to
That's right. That's right.
ascribe to that person.
Right.
But then I take a step back and I think, well, there could be an emergency, right? They could have just gotten a phone call that someone's in the hospital. So again, we don't know why other
That's
people
right.
do what they do, but talk a little bit about that.
That is so true, which is why I also, to that very point, and I can give an example in a moment, is talk about going back and checking, right? So if you're going to make the judgment, right? Because as you said, we're judgy people, at least honor the person and go back and check, is it right? We often will label things but I understand that because that's how your brain works. We have to be able to put things and people in compartments. We have to identify things. We have to process them in a way we understand them. And so everyone has an equation for a particular judgment. So someone may say, gosh, that person is so mean. Do you know how generic mean can be? Like when I say it versus you say it about a particular person, that could be totally wrong because we haven't described the behavior that led you to believe they were mean, right? So if you say, gosh, I walked with this person, I said hello, and they just walked off and didn't even speak. They're so mean. Is that how you would describe mean? I don't know, right? But instead of describing the behavior, you just attach, oh, I mean, you're just mean. I believe I also give the example of lazy. And this again, the terms that I'm using, mean, lazy, these are all things that infect us, not only personally, but also professionally and in the workplace, right? It's very easy to say, oh, well, this person, I mean, they're lazy. They didn't get me X project. I needed it by the end of the day. Here's the thing that I often tell organizations. Your end of the day and my end of the day may be two very different things. So how about let's not say end of the day. How about we give very specific, concrete details? I need this by 2 o'clock because this is what happens for why I need this at 2 o'clock. Are you able to get it to me by 2 o'clock? If not, here's the alternative, right? But we never really go that far with it. We'll just leave it very open and say, oh, well, by the end of the day. Well, if your end of the day was this 2 o'clock deadline, but I didn't know that and I got it to you by 4:30. Oh, well, so I mean, now I'm lazy, right? Because I missed the deadline, right? Like, oh, you mean you're just lazy, you just didn't do it when I wanted you to do it, that kind of stuff. And it really, when you take a moment and reflect, you have to think, golly, I really missed an opportunity to understand this person or to understand what that meant. And again, I think it goes back to we think communication is happening and we think it's very simple. And oftentimes it is missed.
So even if we're very specific in what we're saying, um, and again, like here we are face to face.
That's right.
doing
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
this visit, and people talk about texting and how
Oh,
text it can just mess up things so much because
that's right.
you need to sometimes be able to see a person, look at their eyes, look at their facial expressions, and emojis. I'm sorry, emojis just don't cut it.
Can I
I'm
listen?
gonna
That's
say that.
exact. Laurel, listen, this is what I was going to say when you said the whole texting thing. Um, I think that has led to a whole lot and a whole nother host of issues as it relates to communication. Why? Because I've had people ask me, oh, well, I mean, you know what they meant because they put okay. I said, well, what's wrong with okay? No, they put the capital O and the capital K. Mm, okay. They were like, they didn't put just the O K A Y. They put the capital O and the capital, and there was an exclamation. Oh, okay. So,
Or there wasn't an exclamation
right,
point.
right. And here's the thing. That's how you process, which is fine, right? That's fine that that's how you, but I would imagine either the person maybe didn't even think that far, or maybe they did and they wanted to send some, uh, very, uh,
Abrupt or
yeah, you don't know how
yeah.
the message got sent. And so when you read it and you interpret it for yourself, here's what usually happens. You're now responding based on how you interpreted whatever that text message was, right? So, and this person doesn't know that. This person has sent the message and they've moved on. You have spent 3 hours contemplating, ruminating about a capital letter versus not a capital letter, whether there's an exclamation or not. And now you're ready, right? Now you're ready to respond, right? And because you've talked to everybody. So you've talked to people, you've figured out this is how I'm going to respond. Well, the problem is you're responding all based on this whole like narrative you've created around this text message instead of just calling the person and saying,
Yes.
hey, listen,
Yes.
or even
Yes.
texting back and saying, listen, when I see a capital O and a capital K, for me, that means you're probably angry, or maybe you're being short with me, or maybe you didn't like what I said. Is that where you are with what I did? And you give them space to say yes, no, why would you think that? That's crazy. Right. But we don't often do that. We don't check. We just
Yeah,
create the narrative
yep.
and move on.
That's a long text message, right?
That's why you could
It's
just call and
yeah,
just,
yes. And so this is 2025, right? And my understanding is that the youngsters find it rude to just call, right? Or to just
yes,
make a phone call without texting first to see if the time is okay or whatever. And
yes,
when I
I've
think
heard that
of
too. Yes,
and to me, oh my gosh. All right, so I'm putting this out there right now to friends and family. You want to talk to me? Call me. Call me
yes,
on my phone.
that's right. That's right. That's right. Yep. Yep.
You could text first to see if the time's all right, but yeah, no, it's just absolutely crazy. So let's talk about and honesty and communication. And
Mm-mm.
so you talk about secrets and keeping secrets and what that can do to you and the physiological responses that can happen. Are some secrets good to keep? And again, honesty versus, I don't know, you know,
Are they? Because a
are they,
secret,
are any secrets, are there any secrets that are good to keep?
good to keep for who? The
Um,
keeper or the person who created the act to keep? Because here's what happens with secrets. Anytime you are not revealing something, it has to live somewhere,
yeah,
right? And if you're keeping a secret, it lives within you. Your body knows,
yeah,
your mind knows. And whether you ever part your lips to share it, your body knows. And here's the thing, your body can't unknow it.
yeah,
Why do I say that as being important? For a couple of reasons. Your body cannot unknow it, and it manifests through chronic illness, through stress, through anxiety, early death, mental health issues. Everything that I'm saying has been scientifically proven. The
yeah,
other piece of it, in terms of your body doesn't forget, is that it shows up sometimes in very unexpected and surprising ways. So if you're holding a secret about something or someone and you're put in a particular situation or circumstance, what you know can potentially be expressed in your response. It can be expressed in your behavior. And the person doesn't even know why you're doing it. They don't know where it's coming from. And because you're choosing to withhold the secret, you're not going to tell them. So now you've created a whole different dynamic in this relationship because they don't know what that was about or why you're doing it or what happened. And you're not going to tell them. So now you just have this infection
Yeah.
that just exists and lives now in this relationship.
Yeah. I remember both my kids when they were quite a bit younger. And again, secrets that children keep are sometimes different from secrets that
That's
adults
true.
keep.
Oh, yes,
But
that's very true.
yeah, but I
Very true.
remember, having the talk once the secret or was discovered, and having my children say, we would prefer that you get angry at us later for having kept the secret than being disappointed immediately, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, that is the growth of having the conversation is because we think of the world through our lens and our lived experience, which is very limited in the context of the world, right? Because every person has their own thoughts, their own experiences, their own line of thinking, their own level of rationality. And if you don't tap into that, you are attempting to impart what you think, what you believe, what you've experienced onto someone else. And then you're mad at them because they didn't think the way you thought.
Yeah.
You're mad at them because they didn't respond the way you would have responded. Um, and so that's unfair. But it's also very short-sighted to be able to do that. So the conversation that you mentioned, just to hear that sort of glimmer of, oh, so that's what interesting that you would think that.
Yeah. Yeah. Secrets will always come out. So try
I listen, I don't know, it's a myth and people they have really bought into I can do this and no one will know.
Mm.
And it's just not true.
We are talking today with Dr. Demetria M. McNeal about her book, You Don't Say, You Don't Say, You Don't Say, How We Get Communication Wrong and How to Get It Right. Um, Explain how you talk about habits and how habits can influence our communication. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So what's really interesting about habits is that oftentimes, especially in a comfortable relationship or just in a pattern of behavior, but I'll talk about, let's say, in a comfortable relationship, there can be communication habits that happen. So, for example, if you have, let's say, a best friend and 2 times a month you all go out to eat. And let's say usually every time you're deciding about where to go out to eat, um, one of you always picks. One of you said, "Okay, so just meet me at X place, 5 o'clock. See you there." And let's just say that's the habit.
Mhm.
This person always picks. Well, guess what? One day you may not want that place or the place they pick. You may want something different. But that's been the habit, meaning the pattern and the habit is always, okay, we know we're going to go out. This is the Friday we're going out. So we'll know by Wednesday. Like basically the friend, I'll tell you by Wednesday where we're going on Friday, right? And if that is the habit, that's what you're always going to do. Okay, by Wednesday, I expect, you to let me know what we're going to do on Friday. Friday, we'll meet up, we'll do this. We usually will only stay for 2 hours and then we'll, go home or we may go somewhere else, et cetera, et cetera. And that becomes the communicative sort of pattern for how you communicate what's going to happen and what's going to occur. But here's the thing. Just because you've always done it that way doesn't mean you always have to do it that way. Because as I mentioned, what if you want to go to a different place than what was suggested? Or what if you want to do something different? I don't want to go out to eat on a Friday. What about we go to a concert? How about let's go check out a new movie? It just came out. Why don't you just come over to my house? We can do other things. So because that has been the standard, when you try, as we discussed earlier, to change it and say, hey, well, what about this? Then now it's kind of like, well, I may be okay with it, but wait a minute, is this going to be a new thing now? Are you now choosing what we do? Right. And that's so silly. But it's because that's the habit. The other way that habits can infect relationships is if you're, for example, in a romantic relationship, there you can develop patterns for how you communicate and even patterns for how you argue, whether they're toxic or healthy. You can develop them, meaning if I say something, there's an automatic response, right? So if I say, gosh, how are you doing? I'm all right. How was your day at work? It was fine. If you have been trained to not divulge or go into great detail about what happened at work, that's what you'll always say. You'll always
Yeah.
say, I mean, it was okay, or I just had a long day, right? You won't get into like sort of the details or the minutia of it. You'll just simply say, it was okay. And the person actually grows to expect you to just say that because now it gives them the window to give you everything that happened to them at work, right? It's like, oh, that's all that happened. Well, here's what happened with me at work, and right now there's a whole window of opportunity, um, and that becomes the habit, um, and because that becomes the habit, we don't seem to change it, and it's okay to change it. It's okay for there to be a difference in the way you communicate. There can be a change in the way that you connect with one another.
Again, it takes courage, right?
Well, it does because you
Yeah.
you never really know how someone's going to respond. But the other thing is you have to be able to deal with yourself too, right? Because you have your own insecurities, you have your own baggage, you have your own problems that you've had your own set of issues, trauma, etc. And so you have to make sure that you're okay so that you are in a space to be able to do it and do it without being reckless and careless, right?
So speaking of responses, how do you deal with a defensive response? Or how do you not respond defensively? Or
Yeah, no,
either or
yeah,
both of those.
yeah, and it's very common. So defense is extremely common, and it's oftentimes because people feel attacked. And that's not exclusive to human behavior. That's just animalistic behavior, right? If someone feels that they're being attacked, they are going to defend themselves. And um, the problem with defense is that the only way it happens is what I just said, is that the person feels attacked. That doesn't mean they're being attacked. They have processed what has been said to them as an attack. If you did not mean it as an attack, the question becomes, why do you feel attacked? What about what I said made you feel attacked? So when you say to me, gosh, when someone is defensive, what are you supposed to do with that? I think that you have to address it immediately. Do not let the person, if someone responds to you in a very defensive way, it can immediately stop like the whole communication process
Yeah.
because there's immediate breakdown, especially if there's retaliation to the defense and all this other kind of stuff that we're not going to have time for to share on this show, but that's a whole different conversation. What is nice to happen in that moment, if someone is responding in a way that is defensive, that is confusing to you, you can simply say, seems like you're being defensive. And I did not intend what I said to attack you. Can you help me understand? Is that true? Did you feel that I attacked you? And what about what I said made you feel attacked? And how can I allay the concern that you think that I'm attacking you because I'm not?
Mhm.
Another way is to share what you think happened and then also what you intended. Meaning, Gosh, that response made me think you feel I attacked you. What I was actually trying to do was XXX.
Yeah.
Seems like I missed the mark, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
let's go back. So but it's your ability though to be honest and to be accountable for what happened, right? So oftentimes when someone feels defensive, it's because they feel attacked. But see, now you feel like you have to defend yourself. And
Yeah.
that's usually where it goes, Ari. You
Yeah.
have to be in a space to own your own emotions and the responsibility of the communication. So you have to be able to say, gosh, I probably delivered this in a way that made you feel attacked. And everybody may not be in that space
Right.
because that
Right.
requires a responsibility, accountability, right? That
Yeah.
requires personal traits that if you don't have them, you
Mm,
won't express them.
right. Right. And then if I'm the one feeling attacked, I need to have the
That's right.
courage to say, what are you trying
Yeah,
to do here?
yeah, right. You're right.
This
Yeah,
is you're making me feel bad or whatever.
that's that's right. Because
And
the ownership,
sometimes it's
that's right.
the ownership says sometimes you just want to shut down and run away.
That yes, which is how the communication breaks down. But then here's what happens, because communication is a continuum. If let's say the person shuts down and then they walk away, well, if for example, this is usually not the case, it can be the case. If this is a person you never ever have to see again, it has low impact value, right? Very low impact value. However, if this is a person you have to engage with again, whether if it's at work, if we eat Thanksgiving at the same house, right? Like if it's that kind of person, here's what happens. This person has stormed off, they've been pissed, they've moved on. Well, when we engage again, we're right where we were in that moment,
Yeah.
right? And worse, because now we've been ruminating on it and we've
Yeah.
created narratives around what happened. And see, now we've talked to people. So there's added, right?
Yeah.
Details.
We've done the
That's right.
text thing where
Right. Right. There's all these details now that weren't there, and the story's worse than it was. And so now by the time you like see each other again or you engage again, it's like a whole thing. Right. That
you want
was
to come to
never.
fisticuffs.
That's right. That is right. That's right. That's right.
Oh my gosh. Well, let's take this down a little bit and tell me your opinion on small talk. Is there a
In what
place
way?
is there a place for small talk?
I think so. It's what do you mean by small talk?
What do I mean by small talk?
Yeah.
So when I opened this morning, I asked you about
Yes,
if you woke up to snow. That's kind of like
that's
small
right.
talk, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think there's a place for it, but some people are just not willing at all to deal with anyone who deals with small talk. But
No, that's true. I so you're right on both ends. I do think that there's a space for it, and yes, in general, everyone sort of calls it small talk, but really, it's about just making a connection with someone, right? I mean, and it doesn't take a whole sort of production to do it. It could just be one question, one comment, a smile, and you're in, right? Like it doesn't have to be a whole thing. But I think what small talk in the general sense allows the folks involved to do is to make the person opposite them human. Because when you don't know someone, when you have absolutely no connection with them, then it's not it's almost as if they're not human to you, right? Because I have no interaction with you, I don't see you, I don't know you, I have nothing to do with you. But the moment you smile or nod or you have a general understanding with someone, then you feel some sort of connection, no matter how small. When you reference the people that like don't believe in small talk, um, that's true. I've run across people like that. But here's the thing that I've just experienced over time. If you talk to someone long enough, you'd be surprised how much you have in common with them. And it could be something very simple, meaning like you buy a particular product at a certain store, or you have a particular hobby, or you grew up in the same place, you work in the same industry, you have the same number of siblings. If
Yeah.
you talk with someone long enough, there are more things that connect you than you think you do, than you think you have.
Yeah.
And so for the people that don't like small talk, what's interesting is the people that don't like small talk that I've experienced are usually sort of in a group, or they're usually kind of around other people that are involved in small talk. And so it's always still nice for those conversations to happen, because my experience has also been those individuals usually get involved in the conversation at some point because there has been a topic that has come across
Yeah.
that relates to them. And so now they feel included and they have something to say.
Oh my goodness. I could small talk and big talk and large talk with you all day.
Thank you so
Dr.
much.
Demetria McNeal. You don't say how we get communication wrong and how to get it right. This book is incredible. What's next? I think I heard something about an audiobook version of this.
Yes, I do have, yes. So it is available on Audible right now. So it's available at Amazon, Barnes and Noble. It is available on Audible as well, like right now.
Have you narrated it? Is this you
I
narrating it?
have, that's a great,
Oh,
yeah. Yeah. So it is, I am the narrator. And so it's a very nice read. It's also a very nice listen, if you're choosing the Audible version.
you have the most glorious voice. And
Oh,
I
thank you
would
so much.
imagine you were probably getting people contacting you saying, would you narrate my book? Have you had any of those yet?
We I have not in the influx that I would expect, but that it's interesting you mentioned that that is a conversation that I've had and I'm starting to have. Yes.
Well, I can understand that, but you're already doing so many things. You're affiliated with CU Boulder, the you work in
Not the Boulder campus, but the
the,
medical
the,
school.
the medical school. I
Hmm.
mean, you're doing so many things. Are you writing another book?
I that It's interesting you're bringing that up. That is on the horizon for this year. Yes.
And the topic would be,
I don't want to give anything
you don't want to
away
give
because
it away.
I'm still narrowing it down, because there's so many areas in communication that can be explored. But I'm narrowing it down to the top ones that I'm seeing happen across organizations, that I'm seeing just happen across people. That probably is sort of, if we had to call it, sort of the top issues with communication. So I'm working on narrowing the focus now, but it's
All
in the
right.
works.
Top 10 tips on getting it right or something like that. But I will really look forward to getting that book. Demetria, do you have any shout outs to people that you might want to say hey to or thank your
I
publishers or
Yes, so much. Yes, that's a great point. Mun Press has published the book on my behalf, and they've been a great team that has supported me from the beginning of production all the way to it being on the bookshelves. So that's been awesome. And I've dedicated the book to my friends. They know who they are, that have been in my inner circle for over 20 years, as well as my husband, Andre, and my stepdaughter, Adriana, have all been surrounding me and around me in such a way that has helped me continue to stay grounded and continue to move forward.
we need our community. And you had mentioned that you have friends that are over a couple decades long, and so you must be what, 25?
I I am 25 all
You're a
day.
25. Listeners, I hope you have enjoyed as I have enjoyed it. Again, I would talk to you all day. Demetria McNeal's incredible expertise and information on how we can communicate better with her book. I will have show notes with links and photos. You'll send me maybe a couple photos of you with your book or whatever
I absolutely can
on
do that.
yeah
Yes.
on my website at leadvillelaurel.com. Please like and subscribe to this video because I'm going to do more because I always have fascinating people on. And Demetria, do you have any final advice to our listeners out there about getting it right? I mean, you've already told us so much. Do you have a final tidbit to
Yeah.
leave with?
Yeah. So the thing with communication is that it's not static. It is dynamic and it's ever moving. And communication in general is occurs over a lifetime and it has a life cycle. And so we have to be able to understand it's a living organism and it spans everyone's relationship. It spans all and goes through all the seasons of life. And so you always have to be engaged with it and re-engage with it and come back to it to try to keep getting it right because it doesn't just happen because you think it does.
Thank you so much. Listeners out there, the book, You Don't Say, the author, Dr. Demetria McNeal. Get your copy today on Amazon. Get copies for all the people you communicate with. Early Christmas presents, birthday presents, whatever, just presents, just in be present. Demetria, thank you so much for sharing your time and your expertise with me and with our audience today. And we need to get coffee sometime.
Thank you so much for having me. And I think you're absolutely right. We should definitely connect in person
Thank you.
again.
Have a great weekend and hope to see you soon.
You too.
Bye.